Welcome to Native Calgarian and Mossy for listening. I'm your host, Michelle Robinson, speaking to you in Mohkinstsis in the Blackfoot Confederacy, home of the Niitsitapi, Tsuut'ina Dene, and the Yiharhi Nakota. I talk about history, current news, unheard news, book clubs, with special guests to give local or national issues a voice through an urban Saulteaux Dene lens. My life's work will be to honor the voices of my ancestors and next generation with humor, love, and truth. Reconciliation is work, not performance. May we honor all Indigenous voices with that courage. Today is April 30th, 2025. Welcome to Native Calgarian. If you enjoy hearing Indigenous content by this Saulteaux Dene woman, my Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for showing your support. For those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com. Send in your comments or questions. Also, giving a review helps to whatever medium you're listening from. I have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe. You can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. And always remember to share things you learn to your network. Wouldn't it be amazing if you actually shared one of my podcasts? That'd be awesome. Oki, Naganago, Mekoche Chestokomaki, or Nara Dago Dekot Nagot Tene Siku Saradi. My name is Red Thunder Woman. My married English name is Michelle Robinson, and I use they, them pronouns. My Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Great Bear Lake Tribe in Treaty 11 in Delaney. I'm a native to Turtle Island, and my Dene nation is uninvited to this area of Clincho Tine Indahe in Saulteaux Dene, meaning Many Big Dog Town, named after the Calgary Stampede. I was born in Calgary, or in Blackfoot, Mohkinstsis, as Michelle Elliott, an English name that has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. Acknowledging proximity to whiteness is important, because the darker the skin, the more racism a person experiences in colonial spaces, and the less chances you have of being treated fairly. My late great-grandfather is Milo B. Wolfe from Delaney. His daughter Alice is my late granny. My mother and I are Northern Slavey Dene, or Saulteaux Dene, but my Indian Act and Post status card by the Canadian government says Yellowknives Dene. Through my father, I am a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution. Having a Canadian Indian Act and Post status card is a colonial construct by Canadian policies meant to divide Indigenous peoples' inherent rights. Indigenous Two-Spirit, or the Indigenous 2S LGBTQ community, and Indigenous women are at the bottom of the Canadian socio-economic ladder because of imposed poverty, colonial trauma, racism, gendered violence, and land theft. I'm not a social worker nor an elder, nor do I speak on behalf of all Indigenous peoples, but I can share my journey as a ADHD Dene mom navigating this colonial, misogynistic, racist world in 2025. I think of all of this today, and I hope we honor the many Indigenous lives lost for the so-called country named Canada. I hope you see your role in the importance of stopping harm as a citizen, see your role in reconciliation, and as a treaty partner. Land Back is a movement that could save the planet from climate change created by colonialism, but it would be a part of a treaty partnership, part of meaningful reconciliation, and honoring global initiatives like the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. As a former geomatics drafter, I'd be happy to teach you more, but you'll have to pay me. Go to nativecalgarian.com for more. I want to start off with the saddest news across this country for the Filipino community and Canadians of this terrible tragedy that happened in Vancouver during the Lapu-Lapus Day of Celebration. I checked in with my niece and my nephew to see if they knew anyone. It's just a horrible tragedy. There's a GoFundMe for the community, and I'm seeing a lot of local vigils, even in Calgary tonight. Tonight is the 30th. There will be one here in Calgary. Second, this is my first podcast since the election. So thanks, Trump, for your ridiculousness. Media, like obviously Native Calgarian podcast wouldn't have to even exist if there was any Indigenous inclusion in media at all. With educated folks as well, that would be wonderful. but I know mainstream media doesn't like to hear Natives talk about treaty rights and reconciliation and, half governing in general when it comes to Indigenous lands. So, anyway, I would love to see more objective media, but misinformation and media was a big part of this. I'd love to see media actually call out the lies from politicians. We see a politician like Derek Wildebrandt start Western Standard. And I would argue that Ezra Levant was a politician, a failed politician that started Rebel Media. So, what I'd love to see is people actually calling out the lies and debunking that. It shouldn't be considered media, and yet they get a platform over someone like me any day of the week. And worse, if you are listening to me and you have ever shared Rebel Media or Western Standard, like you actually are contributing to the problem. They're not news. They're not real news. Western Standard is fully funded by the Alberta government. It started under Jason Kenney and now continues under Danielle Smith. So this is literally conservative propaganda for Albertans. So if you're ever sharing that information, honestly, you are a part of the contributors to the misinformation that we're seeing everywhere. So we've seen a lot of political TikTokers, and it's very interesting how many people will listen to them. I bet you I get sent, every single white political TikToker, their newest, hot take on whatever. I'll bet you I'll get 5 a day by Indigenous people, unfortunately. We have APTN, we have Fiona Moore. She was a past guest on my podcast. I've been putting out information. Pam Palmater's been putting out information. It upsets me to no end to see non-Indigenous and Indigenous alike promoting non-Indigenous content creators who never have Indigenous understanding of the issues. But it was constant throughout this entire election. And so to you folks who feel the need to send me these direct messages, like, I hope you're sending my stuff. And what I don't understand is why you're getting this on your feed, right? Like, you're not getting mine, but you are purposely getting white TikTokers. You have to start liking, sharing, commenting when it comes to Indigenous content creators, because these algorithms are already set up against us. So every time you choose not to, and you amplify a white one, they already have the algorithms. They already get all of the views. They don't include Indigenous people. Worse, there's a new one who's Indigenous, he was rude to me. He said terrible things to me, but now he's suddenly had this epiphany that he's now liberal and now against the conservatives, and now people are sending me his crap. He was violent to me, never apologized to me, but everybody's amplifying him. So I guess if I'm just a dick to everybody and I mistreat everybody, then will you amplify my stuff too, or maybe some other Indigenous women? Indigenous women and Indigenous 2S LGBTQ are at the bottom of all of this media for a reason. It's done by algorithms. So you are contributing by sending all these white commentators to me. It's so depressing and annoying because you can't claim that you want more Indigenous inclusion, and then when Indigenous people are actually doing that work, you don't amplify them. So anyway, needless to say, the amount of misinformation in white colonial spaces was terrible, and obviously perpetuated by the rebel medias, the Western Standards, and just alarming to me how much media gets suppressed on hot takes against what they actually said. Like, there's a literal lies. I heard even Pierre Poilievre say lies, and media is not brave enough to even call out what he's lying about. Like, I can't understand that. So, and I did want to talk about APTN and the breach. The breach actually had Indigenous political commentators the night of the election, which shocked me. One of them because I know she's a conservative, I will never listen to, so I wouldn't give any airtime to that for me personally. Um, but for other people, like I hope you watch that at least, at the minimum, instead of, people who would never have Indigenous inclusion at these tables. Another friend of mine, actually, who was originally a liberal, he started Indigina Poly, so INDIGIPOLI. He's been sharing it on all the social medias because he had a communications degree. And so I have been trying to amplify that for since he founded it. There was the Save the CBC campaign. Thank God that the conservatives didn't get in because they were just going to defund it, even though they actually did a pretty good job of showing how little they get for money compared to other G7 groups. And, for people who have listened to me, read the Tower of Babel from the CBC executive director for decades. And like he already said, Canada is the only country that gets regular media from a different country. Like if you're in Britain, the British get British media. They listen to the BBC. They follow the BBC. All those little countries in Europe, they follow their own media. Countries, Canada's the only one who doesn't. So to me, I would love the CBC to be better. I would love to see it have more Indigenous inclusion. But the truth is that it's the only thing you can turn on the radio, and it's consistent. So I do wish they'll get better at more Indigenous content and inclusion, but at least it still exists for today. Unfortunately, the Liberals had a minority government, so that means we have yet another snap election. So, way to go, Canada. I don't know what to say. Um, there was a really great organization that came out of Montreal that I was showing on all my socials, and it's Cult Montreal. And they gave like actual stats talking about the disinformation that's endangering this democracy here in Canada. So if you're not like I'm sharing it, I wish other people would amplify that message. But at the end of the day, disinformation, misinformation, Russian bots, at which Pierre Poilievre, Jason Kenney, the Conservatives, Harper, they have always been given money to these paid people to, have ugly comments in my TikTok, have ugly comments, direct message to me, all of that stuff. Like that has been the norm for over 10, 15 years now. It's been proven, it's been reported, and yet people are still like, I don't know about that CBC. Oh my God. Like, I do know you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. And honestly, all the years of doing politics in general, it's still a problem. Anyway, I do want to talk a little more about the Indigenous vote as well. I understand respectfully a lot of Indigenous choose not to vote. I do. Um, I know that our right to vote was hard fought for. Um, our veterans actually fought for our rights that we gained in 1960s for us to be able to start to vote. I'm still a sovereign Yellowknife Dene First Nation, and I think it's important that we are at the table. So yes, I did vote, and I will always vote, and I wish that more Indigenous would vote. But respectfully, I understand why they choose not to. Um, Over the course of the last 10 years, federally, we've worked so hard with Elections Canada to finally have polls more accessible in northern communities and First Nations. None of it. The NDP MP, Lori, she did get reelected, by the way. She worked really hard to get none of it poll stations as well. Like that has been a huge issue. So yes, we gained the vote in the 1960s, but having access to poll stations has still always been an issue. And in the last 10 years under Justin Trudeau, we got so much work done of, different Indigenous language inclusion when it came to Elections Canada. And one of my favorite things I seen was Elections Canada say, we respectfully will work with the Indigenous of the territory and not impose on the Indigenous of the territory. Like that's a huge mind shift and mindset from Canada to Indigenous people. So I have zero respect for people who say nothing but negative things about Justin Trudeau and the Liberals for the last 10 years. Like that is a conservative talking point that y'all fell for. And I'm sad for you that you have no critical thinking skills, but that's what it is. So I did want to give a shout out to a CBC person or a reporter who works for CBC. He's a member of the Chippewa and Kettle Stony Point First Nation in Southern Ontario, and he previously was a journalist with APTN. His name is Brett Forrester. So, Masi, Brett, for all the work you do. He put out some great information about the 12 First Nation, Inuit, and Métis folks that were elected in this election. So, you all know I'm a liberal, but I think it's important, no matter what party, is that we have Indigenous at each party level. At the table. Now, I feel really bad for Billy Morin because I can't imagine working in that toxic environment as a conservative, but he did get elected. For the Liberals, we have Métis Chartrand, or Rebecca Chartrand. She is a wonderful human being. My daughter first met her when she came to Banff for one of the Buffalo Treaty signings. So that was a really great day. We were really lucky. We got Mandy Gull-Masty. She was a former Grand Chief and Ground Council of the Crees in Quebec. Métis MP now, Buckley Belanger. He is the lone Liberal in Saskatchewan. So really grateful for him to have taken that from the Conservatives. So the Conservatives here, I almost said the US. My apologies. Ellis Ross, he is now a Conservative MP. And of course, Billy Morin, I've already mentioned. Mark Dalton is Métis from BC. So as far as I knew yesterday, it was still too close to call, but obviously he's likely going to get there. So we'll see. Anyway, recounts are a thing. NDP Leah Gazin, grateful that she got reelected. She's been a human rights advocate for as long as I've ever known her, and I'm really happy she got to keep her seat in Winnipeg Centre. And she's done a lot of good work with the Red Dress Alert system as well. So yeah, she's just a wonderful human being. Got the House of Commons to unanimously agree that residential schools was genocide, and tabled legislation to combat residential school denialism, because I think that's a real issue as well. And and Jaime Baptiste got reelected from Nova Scotia. I was really worried. We had some personal conversations off air that I was worried he'd even get reelected, but he did. So yes, way to go, man. Wade Grant, he is from BC. He's a Liberal that just became an MP. And I miss anybody else? Adam Chambers is a Métis from Ontario. And Bloc Québécois, Simon Pierre Savard Tremblay. My apologies for not getting that. He's Wendat from the Huron-Wendat Nation in Quebec. So at least we have a few folks at the table. Unfortunately, the Green Party, they only elected one person, and that was Elizabeth May, so we don't have any Indigenous representation there. I see a wonderful statement from the National Chief, Cindy Woodhouse Nipanak, and she talked a bit about what she heard from each of the leaders, and she looks forward to working with everyone, and she always reiterates that she's proud of our people, and I'm so grateful. So I wanted to talk a bit about Palestine activists. It's so hard because they come across as one issue group of people, and that totally sucks because, I've personally tried to educate the Calgary local ones, and I don't know if it goes in one ear and out the other, or it's just not hitting with them. But like if we could be talking about Indigenous issues and we're talking about Indigenous rights and talking about the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, then we'd all be on the same page. But unfortunately, you don't see that cross collaboration sometimes. So anyway, um, as a liberal, like I just know that if you talk about Palestine, you'll be a backbencher. Like I just know that. I have said repeatedly to people who have said, Michelle, you should run for the Liberals. I've said, oh, I've been pro-Palestinian since for over 10 years now, and so those talking points would always be used against me, and I would likely not even get a green light from the party based off of my stance on Palestine. So and what's funny is that they push and they push for all the MPs or sorry, all the candidates to agree to votepalestine.ca, which I promoted in my podcast over the last few weeks. Um, they want us to, but then they don't show up for us, right? Like they don't volunteer, they don't donate, they don't endorse, um, unless you go onto their Vote Palestine thing. But here's the thing: when I ran municipally, when I ran provincially, and I was already an outspoken advocate for Palestine, I didn't get that volunteer time, that endorsement, those donations. So, like, with the deepest respect, if you feel that Palestine is the only issue that matters, but you're not a part of the process, what you're doing is you're expecting people to put their neck out for you, and then you just let them hang and die. And that's is what it is. People have to make that decision. And I knew for me, I guess the ADHD and possible autism is why I would never not stand with Palestine. But if you want someone at the table to help you, and that this is true of just being an Indigenous person talking about colonizer politics, racism in general. Um, People don't like that, and their little feelings get hurt, especially in Canada. And because of it, like that hinders me from being an advocate at those tables for my own people, let alone for Palestine. So, there needs to be an understanding with those activists of how it goes down. And I'll say this, like as outspoken as I was, like the Lebanese Palestinian Muslim community did not support me. They did not vote for me when it came to municipal or to provincial. And who did they vote in? Municipally, some white guy who had been in politics forever, and he didn't even finish his term. That's who they voted in. And he actually hadn't declared at the time I had declared. So that was part of the reason why I declared was, hey, the sooner I get my name in, the best. I met him. I could tell he hated me. And it was shortly after that he said, no, he's going to run. And so that sucked. And I didn't get the support that I needed from, Palestinian activists, from the Muslim community. And so it really taught me a lot of things about putting your neck out on the line for other communities that would never put their neck out on the line for you. And I outright had a white man who worked for a nonprofit who said to me, I work for a nonprofit and I can't jeopardize any of my funding, so I won't be endorsing you. So if you are a person that hears from white people, especially, oh my God, you're so articulate, you should totally run. No, they're full of shit. And unless they're willing to commit to money, unless they're willing to commit to a vote, unless they're willing to commit to an endorsement, they're actually full of shit. Now, it is my job to encourage people to run, and I want people to run. But I just also want to be realistic about activists who claim one thing but then do another. So that's I will say that about this particular election, because a lot of people said they wouldn't respect this smartvote.ca, that their strategic vote, all of the other things that I put out there, the drag the vote. And I outright told one of my candidates who cockedly said to me, he goes, I got the Muslim vote. I said, no, you don't. He's he's like, of course I do. I'm like, no, no, you don't, babe. And the numbers came out. He did not get the vote. And it sucks because I want people to run, but I also want people to be realistic. And I said to him, you know, sometimes people's hate for 2S LGBTQ supersedes their love for Palestine. And that was a real thing for this particular candidate. So it sucks. I hate this. And but I've said this before in numerous podcasts before. So whether it was missed, whether it was dismissed, because I'm just, dumb native woman in the eyes of colonizers, the end of the day, I have said this repeatedly. People don't listen. And then you wonder why a topic like Palestine isn't, on top of mind during an election like this. So sorry, colonizer politics, Westminster politics is this way. And if you're not engaged, donating, volunteering, endorsing, that's why it's not included. So that's all I got to say about that. With that, let's move on to the Rhinoceros Party. I know to a lot of people they think it's a joke, and if you read their website, it makes you laugh. It's really great, but it is at least a place for people who are disenchanted. And I mean, some days I think I'm there, and I'll run for the Rhinoceros Party. But it is a protest, and it is a way to talk about that. Now, for folks who are following along, Pierre Poilievre's riding of Ottawa Carleton had the longest ballot. And the folks who put this together, the advocacy group, they're in protest of the first past the post voting system, the very system that I promised in 2015 we would change, and then shortly after was not respected. Why would people join the Rhino Party? Because of that. We need to have change. So anyway, the Rhino Party, the advocacy group, the longest ballot, they're trying to talk about independent electoral reform processes. Hats off to you guys. I think you guys were actually a little more unspoken. I know a lot of the, stuck up colonizers that are like, how dare you interfere with our voting system? They're the ones who had their panties in a bunch over the fact that we couldn't get meaningful change when it comes to electoral reform, and they want you to do it a certain way when it's like, but you've tried to do all of the right ways. We all voted for the Liberals in 2015 in the hopes that we would have electoral reform. So hats off to the Rhino Party, hats off to the longest ballot advocacy group. I think what you did in Carleton was fantastic for two reasons. One, it got rid of Pierre, and two, it's that bigger picture that you tried to raise awareness to an election issue that wasn't being talked about, and you did it in the best way. So I have a lot of respect for that. And so for folks who didn't know, there was 91 candidates on the ballot, and it was like bigger than like an 8 by 14 page page, and I can't imagine what it was like for those poor electoral folks who had to work that. Oh my God, I feel so bad. Except for that one guy who obviously didn't call out Pierre and his wife who went behind the same ballot thing to vote. Like, that was kind of shady and shitty for that matter. So locally, I was promoting my candidate, Priti O'Brien-Martin, and yeah, it's such a whirlwind. Like, for folks who complain about our political system, God, how many times I wish I could encourage you to get involved. I'm involved all the time. It's not like it's an election time and I'm going to get involved. It's an all the time thing. So I'm part of the EDA, or the Electoral District Association, which every single riding has, and they have it for every single party. So if you're an activist and you're like, I just hate all the parties, okay, start the Rhino Party in your EDA, please. Start doing that work all the 4 years leading up to an election, please. Do the actual campaign as well, because it needs to be done. And that's, you claim to be an activist, then do the work so that you can see what it's like to be on the receiving end. When I got, I got a message from the College of Physicians and Surgeons for Canada, and my name's not on the ballot, so I can't reply the way I wanted to. But if I could, it would have been, well, when you mofos start respecting our treaty rights to health, When you mofos quit being racist, when you mofos have Indigenous education, maybe, yeah, I could endorse your stupid organization because I am pro science. But the problem is your racist, sexist, ableist bias stops you from being a good doctor or surgeon to me, and I'm labeled whatever the fuck you want to label me. Much like my ancestors behind me, you label us. So it's just too bad because it's like you shoot yourself in the foot, and and you're not even an activist group. You're supposed to be a professional, group representing a professional group, and you're not because you're racist, you're sexist, you're ableist, you're fat phobic, you're just terrible, and you're not changing. So if I'm a white male, back to proximity of whiteness, I might get some care. If I'm a male, I might get some care. But as an ADHD Indigenous Dene woman, I'm not getting the care I should be getting. So I'm just so frustrated with all of it, where people who claim to care about politics but don't do the work in between, and they don't do the work during. Because if you've seen like the amount of anti-Indigenous bias that comes from your own team at times, it's so frustrating. If I say the sky is blue, people are like, no, but from the white guy from head office says, hey, the sky is blue, they believe it. So like there is a huge bias, and it literally hinders your own team by being such a sexist, I guess misogynistic. Even if you're a woman, you can be a misogynist. And it's just a shame because it's like, people have skills to bring, and we don't even utilize them because of the choices that other people have predetermined in their head that they do not like certain folks. So it just sucks. So I did watch the election results with my team. We have we call them sequence sheets now, but they used to be called bingo sheets. So it's just entering that data. It's like Minesweeper or bingo with no fun at the end by going bingo, and they call them bingo sheets. But anyway, it's just a fun thing to do, and at least you're really involved and paying attention. It's a long day, but at least you can say you did the work. So few Canadians have actually done the work of being involved in a campaign, running a campaign, putting their name up for public office. Like, if you've seen the type of horrible comments people send people, maybe you would have more understanding than why it is that people aren't, the perfect person that you're going to marry. It's politics. It's not about getting married to the person, but there's an expectation of people that they would never even apply to themselves. It's a sickness, I think. Here in Calgary, we were projected to get like 6 candidates, and we only got one, and it barely. Like, it was still touch and go yesterday, and they finally declared it. I'm certain if I was the con, I would absolutely, have a recount because it's too close to count. I think there is 1,000 vote difference, but it is an example of every vote matters. And I want to give a shout out to the NDPers who, you know, pinched their nose and decided, okay, I'll vote Liberal this one time. It mattered. I did put out social media a request from Liberals to do the same for Blake Desjardins in Edmonton, because the smart voting, the strategic voting showed that if the Liberals would lend their vote to the NDP, he would still be elected. But unfortunately, he lost his seat. And he is an amazing person, an Indigenous person, who could have be representing. Instead, we have Kerry Deloitte, and here's the irony: as close as that race was, he may step down and still give his seat to Pierre Poilievre. So we'll have to run a by-election there within, I don't know, next 6 months, so that he can have that. So I pray, if that is true and all of that happens, that we give Blake Desjardins all of our time and energy so that we can beat Pierre Poilievre not once, but twice. Shout out to Bruce Fanjoy, who did beat him, and to all the constituents of Carleton who voted for Bruce Fanjoy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think all of Canada thinks you're a freaking hero as of today, anyway. Um, so yeah, I talked a little bit already about the trolls, the bots, and let me tell you, white women, unfortunately, you got Danielle Smith. That's your woman there, and the votes did show a lot of you women still voted conservative against your own best interest. And, you know, an analysis has been done of the Trump white women supporters. And a lot of them are older women with adult kids seeing that their kids didn't have the same opportunity and just falling for these lies by these troll and bot machines, um, and voted for Trump. And I would argue Canadians did the same damn thing up here because the amount of popular vote for the cons was pretty high. It's sad, but it was really high. So at the end of the day, white women, I know you voted. I know you voted con. And I can't believe you fell for all these lies, but that's on you, man. Um, anyway, at least Pierre Poilievre lost his seat. Now, while there is this conversation happening, the infighting in the cons has begun, and I'm here for it. Um, JD Vance's bestie, he got elected. Giovanni, he's a Canadian MP now. And anyway, he was shit talking Doug Ford, and Doug Ford was shit talking the conservatives federally. Jason Kenney, obviously, in there for the CBC. And so I watched CTV just to boycott Jason Kenney. I don't know if anyone in the world hates him more than I do, but I sure do. I would never want to hurt him, but I certainly never want to listen to him. Part of Harper's team, part of dismantling the unions up in Fort Mac that all Albertans were seemed to be a-okay with, and the NDP were pretty silent about. I know that because Hugh MacDonald, who was an Alberta Liberal Party member, and former leader at one point in time, lovely man. He was a Boilermaker, and that's why I knew of him. And my dad was a Boilermaker, so there was some commonality there. Anyway, those were long back when the Alberta Liberal Party was still functioning, and I was part of it, and I ran for it. So anyway, I can't stand Jason Kenney. And for folks who don't know, I got blocked on social media by him because I had the audacity to talk about the expulsion of the Métis in McMurray in order for the oil sands expansion. So that's what elicited my ban. Wasn't even mean about it. And yeah, his baby pants staffers and him were like, she's too mean. We gotta block her. So now I block all conservatives because they're not worth my time and effort, and I'll see their shitty tweets and hot takes anyway. So, and they don't need to see mine, frankly. Anyway, massive shout out to the NDP who did vote Liberal. I do know some of you voted Conservative because that's still your go-to. It's fine. I am sad panties about Blake Desjardins. I hope that we can get him back in. Um, I have seen some terrible hot takes about the NDP and Jagmeet Singh, and I just, from the bottom of my heart, I don't agree with what most of these white women were saying about him. I I just find it so funny how many white commentators for the NDP miraculously forget about NDP, screwing over Marilyn North Pagan, screwing over that MPP out in Ontario who was pro-Palestine. Like, they didn't have this fucking outrage then. And I said this in a previous podcast and nobody noticed. So, with the deepest respect to all of the, oh my God, the NDP, you have to get back to your roots. You know what your roots are. Like, my my Dene family, my grandfather, he had to lie about being Oneida in order to get a job in Yellowknife. And when he was working and when my uncle was working, they had a massive strike up in Yellowknife and like people died. My dad is a proud retired union guy. He would not have a problem with horrible violence in a second. So, with the deepest respect, when you say getting back to your roots, I think sometimes some of y'all have a really privileged kumbaya understanding of what the NDP actually are and how they have no problem screwing over people of color and women. So I do hope people look back and do some soul searching there, but it wasn't okay. They had to be decimated in order for us to try to save Canada from the Conservatives. And the amount of people who did vote Conservative, obviously, lots of change needed. With deepest respect, folks, Mark Carney is a Conservative. I've always maintained, even under Justin, we were still right of center. The NDP still right of center. And yet, if you talk to a colonizer, they think they are so left. And I'm like, nah, man. Mark Carney literally was given the Order of Canada by Stephen Harper. So I don't know. I swear to God, you could never make anybody happy in this country. But I think that Bruce Fanjoy is a fantastic human being. Really has a carbon neutral house. So the CBC reported that, and I read that, and I'm like, oh my God, I love this guy. He's been working really hard in his writing for 2 years. Again, that's why I say if you're not doing the work in between elections, what kind of activist are you? Whatever. I'll tell you, I didn't expect to learn about Down with Webster, some Ottawa band from 2009. Apparently, Mark Carney just loves them. And there's lots of, videos of him going around after the election was won. And this Down with Webster, they gifted him a red sweater that had like a Canadian flag on the right side and the PM on the left side. And yeah, he was dancing out to that. I couldn't believe it. So um, I know a lot of people hated Justin Trudeau, and I don't stand with you. He brought us back from third party status. He navigated the first Trump. He just was part of when they dismantled the North American Free Trade Agreement. He had to navigate COVID. He invested in First Nation, Métis, and Inuit for the first time, unlike any other MP. Yes, the bar was low, but here we are. Um, his work with Mark Carney allowed us, and Chrystia Freeland allowed us to be on top economically, according to colonizers' economies, for all the G7 nations. So, and his work allowed Mark Carney to win. So I'm grateful to have witnessed all of that. I'm sad more people don't understand the gravity of that and don't say more positive things about Justin, but it is what it is. The Bloc Québécois, I was surprised at how many seats they lost. During the debates, everybody really liked what their leader had to say. Really happy to tell everybody that Maxime Bernier lost his seat. Uh, and I'm really excited to watch all this strategic voting analysis that's coming down because, like, the polls said one thing, but like it's very clear what happened. Anyway, um, every riding is different, and I'm hoping we're going to find some unity to support progressive movements. Obviously, the strategicvoting.ca, smartvoting.ca, vote palestine.ca, drag the vote .ca. Loved watching the drag kings and queens sharing their, vote for my rights, please. Anyway, it is April 30th. May 5th is around the corner. For folks who don't know, May 5th is Red Dress Day. This was started by a Métis artist who, she really started this conversation about that on that day. So we do have an event happening locally. I have shared it a million times. I got to give a huge shout out to the Reconciliation Action Group again for trying to do some fundraising. So there was a tiny honoraria to be able to be gifted to any of the dancers or drummers or elders that are coming. If you want to help at all with that, as I've said in all of my other podcasts, as well as on social media, reach out. It's unfortunate, but we have a lot of lateral violence within the community too. So, just let's try to work together the best we can because this affects us all. So even if you don't like me, there are other co-organizers so that you can at least reach out to them in order to get involved. And yeah, thanks for listening if you still hate me. I'm just being a jerk. Um, really wanted to give a shout out to Nagan Sinclair. He was on that Reach or APTN, I can't remember, but he was talking all night about the election results as well. And he reached out to me. He was like, "Oh, I'm so sad I missed the book club. Can I come to the next one on my dad?" I'm like, "Of course you can. Holy Hannah." So he has the link. So after I'm done this podcast, what I'm going to be doing is reading Murray Sinclair's last book, and excited for that podcast coming up. And again, for folks who want to have a conversation about separation, oh my God, I just shared. Thank God the Alberta NDP are doing some work on this, but Danielle Smith has started the process about changing with Bill 54 our elections, and it just sucks because we've worked so hard to get polls with First Nations, with Métis, obviously federally Inuit, but having access to the right to vote is so difficult in this country. And she's trying to create yet more barriers, very similar to what Stephen Harper did when he was still in office, about creating barriers for people to vote, especially with ID as well. Um, this isn't going to affect me, but this is going to affect our most marginalized people or the people on reserves that have big distances. Like, I know cons don't listen to my podcast, but man, I cannot wrap my head around it. I should say this too, as a out liberal in Alberta, as an Indigenous woman, I've always experienced terrible things being said to me my entire life. But obviously, when I became a liberal, it became worse. And now, in today's day and age, the rhetoric is really bad. And like, I've seen the posts that say, go kill your local liberal and things like that. And like, that's me. My own family said to my face, "Oh, not another 5 years of liberals." And it's so heartbreaking because it's like I try to do good work. I truly believe that that's the right direction for our country. Um, would I like it to be better? Oh, yeah, but a lot of people just complain on, you know, keyboards. They don't do the work that we have to do all the time to maintain our democracy, even if it's a Westminster colonial democracy. Um, folks have misconceptions of what chief and council are. It's like it's worse than a school trustee in the sense that the province can just override anything they do. Like it's worse than that. That's why I talk about being a third class citizen. So anyway, this whole conversation's pissing me off. I signed the stupid NDP petition about, Smith and her separatist idea, but and I posted the petition out on all of my socials, and that's all I can do. I ran provincially, which is more than most people will ever do, and I can't do much more. I'm not really an NDPer, so that's why me being an NDPer is not really in the cards here. Um, our November book club is The Arc of the Medicine Line by Tony Rees. He is a non-Indigenous person, but a Blackfoot elder told me that this was a really good book and that all folks should read this book. So if you're going to talk about the 51st state, if you're going to talk about Donald Trump and his stupid conversation about the border, I do pray people will at least read this one book at the very bare minimum so they have an understanding of what had to happen. Um, and I haven't really discussed my Oneida roots, but I know my family regularly reminds me that we have a long, proud tradition of understanding. We fought for that border too, and we fought for our treaties. And I believe that, and I try to conduct myself with that belief system first. And so, for folks who believe in reconciliation, I mean, support Indigenous people. Don't just talk for us or over us. Maybe try encouraging others to listen, even if they're a misogynistic dick who said terrible things about the liberals less than a fucking year ago and terrible things to me. At least you're sharing his shit now, right? Anyway, I want to give one more shout out to Mark Carney. In my previous podcast, I talk about meeting him, but um, one thing he said during the debate that I wish people really understood and listened to, and I see all these clips, but not this one, and I don't know why, but the liberals put it out as part of our social media, and I tried to share it, but I just know folks don't see that kind of thing because they have it suppressed. And he talked about how, the reason why the Charter of Rights and Freedoms exists is to protect the common person from people like him and all the people that are on the stage with him. And I just don't think Canadians understood the gravity of that. Now, I've never seen the Charter really properly put out there for Indigenous people. Police brutality. I have worked for 15 years in the Liberal Party on some sort of mechanism of accountability on that topic, and it just goes absolutely nowhere. So that's why I always go back to the 231 calls to justice for the national inquiry and the justice component of TRC. These law societies, always fighting us, police unions always fighting us. The stats are there to prove it, how overrepresented we are in brutality and death when we have police interactions. The G7 is coming up, and I'm aware that our CMP intelligence is busy, and I'm going to do everything I can to not really be around for that because for me, it's I just don't want to have anything to do with the RCMP. Even being around Justin Trudeau, his RCMP detail were terrible people. They like in the liberal circles, they would push people like me around. So I don't really want to be. When I met Mark Carney, he wasn't technically the MP. So his stupid security were there, but not as mean as before. And now that he's MP, I just know I can't be around him. So probably we'll never meet him again, just because I can't see myself wanting to expose myself to the police like that. And yeah, I think of somebody like Splitting the Sky, John Boncourt. For folks who don't know who I'm talking about, this was an Indigenous legend. He was arrested actually and serving time in Rikers Island and was a part of the revolution that happened in there. But during the G7 that was here in what, it's like 2005, something like that, he got arrested for trying to arrest George W. Bush for his crimes against humanity. And there's a picture of him doing it. Just a legend. He passed away, and we had a memorial for him here in Calgary. A few of us activists. This was years ago already. Anyway, I think of him as the G7 comes up, and I think of the RCMP looking for the next John Boncourt. So yeah, if you're listening and you're a lawyer, let me know. I might need you on speed dial. Just kidding. I try to stay out of trouble because I just can't afford that type of brutality. Like I see it enough already, and I witness it through my friends and family. I hate it. I hate this as a part of our life, and I wish Canadians would do more about it. Regardless, Masicho to my ancestors, to my granny, to my mom of what strength looks like through your example. I want to thank my dad for teaching me to be blunt and strong. My stepmom for showing me what a proud culture is through her Austrian family. To my husband, Darcy, you produce, edit the show, but you're my husband, my childhood friend, the father of our child, and you have witnessed decades of ableism, racism, and sexism. To our child, we are blessed to learn from you daily. We are honored you chose us. You give me daily accountability to conduct myself and be a better and stronger person. I hope my daughter and my family in general will be proud in the future of me trying to discuss these issues. I obviously honor the Blackfoot as the elders and members have been so kind to me on my Red Road journey, helping me find my voice. And, I'm on your lands. I'm grateful to you forever. Elder Red Crane taught me how to pronounce my spirit name in Blackfoot. Leonard Kenny taught me how to pronounce it in Satu Dene. My humblest apologies to the elders and language keepers as I learned my proper pronunciation. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, thank you. For those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. I have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe. You can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and posts on social media. And as always, I love doing the touch grass movement. And, we have this puppy named Trinket. He's now 4 months old. And watching him grow has been like such a blessing. He just graduated from beginner puppy school and will be moving on to intermediate now, and which is ridiculous. PetSmart. It's not real training. It's just like a promotion to buy their stuff. Anyway, it's just fun for the kids and everybody. But I want to give a shout out to Four Dog Brewery. I'm not for, I support Stonewall Recovery. I support recovery in general. My husband produces a podcast that's about recovery. So you may see me sharing David Lurie's posts about recovery. And, but this Four Dog Brewery, they hosted the rescue agency that we got Trinket from. So I bought a couple of their sweaters and t-shirts, and yeah, they were even at Comic-Con the other day gifting out little sweaters for dogs. So I don't know, lots of love to them, and I really appreciated that they had the foster mommy that took care of my dog and the litter and the mommy. And unfortunately, the mommy, her bottom wasn't working when we first met Trinket, and it doesn't look like she's going to get much better. So anyway, I'm a big proponent to adopt. Please don't, get from breeders if unless you live in a different world than I do. I can't imagine. Mutts, I think, are the best thing in the world. So I love my Trinket. I love my Hugo. And I want to give side eye to those Calgary rabbits. You're lucky I'm not tradish. My beautiful cousin would respond, "Are you being my dish?" Thank you, folks, for listening. Appreciate it as always.